Just waiting for the signals. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 19th, 2015 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. Thank you for being here tonight. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room if you haven't already done so. Please pick one up. You can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be opportunities for public comment at various stages of our agenda, beginning first with item number 4, public comments of a general nature, and there will be opportunities for public comment on all the items on our agenda tonight. In Downers Grove, we are very proud of our motto of preserving the balance between tradition and progress, but sometimes it's nice to establish new traditions, and you saw one at the very beginning of tonight's program, celebrating some of the great things about Downers Grove and why we love to live here and why all the hard work that everyone in this room does day in and day out truly translates into an outstanding community. So I hope you like the intro. It's something that we're going to continue to do as the lead off to our village council meetings, and I think it was very well done and rather neat. So we'll see how that goes. It is our proud tradition to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I would like to ask everyone to please stand and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holman, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White. Commissioner Vitimo. Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here. Commissioner
Barnett. Mayor Tully.
Here. This brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight. Those are our minutes from our council meeting on May 12, 2015. Do any members of the village council have any questions, comments, corrections, or changes?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved unanimously. Before we get to public comments, we have a special presentation tonight for some very special guests for some very special, extraordinary reasons. To introduce things properly, I would like to invite our police chief, Robert Porter, up to the podium to tell us more about it. Chief Porter, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This past year, we decided to switch up our awards and recognition procedures, and what we've decided to do is periodically throughout the year, we'll be taking time to publicly acknowledge the work of our officers, our staff, and also of our citizens, in particular in life-saving type actions as well as acts of bravery. So we're fortunate enough tonight to have 2 officers we'll be honoring. I'd like to thank their families for being here as well. We have Officer Jim Edwards and Officer Brian Johnstone that we're going to be recognizing for life-saving measures. So at this point in time, Mayor, if you'll join me up front with the handing out of the awards, and I would like to turn it over to our Chairman of our Awards and Recognition Committee, Lieutenant Shannon Gillette.
Mayor Tully, members of the Village Council, Manager Fieldman, and Chief Porter, thank you for this opportunity to share 2 departmental awards with you this evening. My name is Lieutenant Shannon Gillette, and it is my privilege to serve as Chairman of the Downers Grove Police Department Commendations Committee. I would first like to invite Officer Brian Johnstone to receive his commendation. Officer Brian Johnstone was on patrol and scanning the fire department radio channel. He heard that the paramedics were dispatched to a Northside residence for a report of an infant choking and possibly not breathing. Officer Johnstone immediately responded and arrived at the house 1.5 minutes before the paramedics arrived. Officer Johnstone was met at the door by a woman holding a 2-month-old baby that was not breathing. He took the baby and noted that she was choking on vomit or mucus. He turned the baby over and delivered back blows which cleared the infant's airway. The baby began to breathe and to cry. He then held the baby to maintain a clear airway until the medics arrived. Had it not been for Officer Johnstone's quick actions, the infant may not have had another breath of air until the medics arrived over 90 seconds later. Officer Johnstone's actions contributed greatly to saving this young life. Congratulations to Officer Brian Johnstone for being awarded the Downers Grove Police Department Life Saving Award. Next, I would like to invite Officer James Edwards to receive his commendation. Officer Edwards was on duty as a school resource officer at Downers Grove South High School. While monitoring activities in the school cafeteria, Officer Edwards was alerted to a female in distress. Officer Edwards recognized signs of choking as the student was grabbing her throat and was unable to speak. Officer Edwards asked the student if she was choking, and she responded with a head nod to indicate she was in fact choking. Officer Edwards utilized his training, knowledge, and experience at this critical moment to administer life-saving measures to include the Heimlich maneuver. Officer Edwards is recognized this evening for his decisive actions and professional demeanor during this life-threatening situation. Congratulations to Officer James Edwards for being awarded the Downers Grove Police Department Life Saving Award.
You know, there are a lot of things that come through these chambers that are perceived as having various levels of importance to various different people, but it's acts of bravery and life-saving acts like we just heard that truly make this place, this chamber, really proud. And I'm really glad and honored that we get to enjoy that. I was saying earlier to Officer Johnstone that I'll take a lot of rocks, slings, and arrows thrown at me as mayor for various things like sidewalk cracks and whatnot. These are really the moments that I think really make the job worthwhile and make our community proud. So congratulations to both Officers Edwards and Johnstone once again. How about one more round of applause? Thank you for your outstanding service to our community. And thank you, Chief Porter. Lieutenant Gillette, thank you. That brings us to item 4, which, as promised, is reserved for public comments of a general nature. If there are members of the audience here tonight that have questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda, this is the opportunity to come to the podium, give us your name, and we'd welcome hearing from you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Jeff DeSico. I came a few weeks ago regarding a development that the developer is trying to develop and some zoning changes on Fairview. Last week, a realtor came by my house and presented me this nice little map of Fairview and Hill Street, and their goal is to purchase all the homes on Fairview down to Hill Street and to develop townhomes. And her sales pitch was unprofessional at best. That's how I characterize it. And I'm not really too concerned about somebody who comes by and says, this is your home, I understand that, Jeff. I'm going to write you a big fat check, you can move out of Downers Grove and you'll be happy. But inside the proposal was a rinky-dink letter where I would sell your house on contingency, and basically I would join a limited partnership in a real estate investment. So it seems, you could tell to me, they're just fishing, don't worry about it. But, there are some people in the neighborhood who perhaps don't understand due diligence, or hiring a lawyer, or, hiring a financial advisor who understands, the risks and benefits of signing some contingency and getting into a limited partnership. So I guess I would recommend that, for somebody in the neighborhood that this might occur, you'll be getting more people like me popping up. It seems like if somebody would sign this as it's currently presented, it would end up on Chuck Gowdy and the I-team asking, why did you sign this? And then somebody on the village council saying, this was a bad deal to begin with, you should have never signed this. So just an FYI, it's, I kindly told her that, I'm like, I'm either all in or I'm all against. And right now, everything that's presented, I'm completely all against any sort of development on Fairview and Hill, taking all the homes and developing townhomes. So just an FYI, I don't think many of my neighbors are too excited about this, but they are having a open invitation for the neighbors on May 28th, where you can come and meet the developer from Wolfpack, and they'll try to convince you. So, right now, it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, walks like a duck. So, I'm not too concerned about me, but, somebody else could find this and sign the contract, and it would get ugly, in my opinion. So, just an FYI.
Well, thank you for giving us the heads up. Appreciate the diligence in your neighborhood. Other questions or comments of a general nature?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Michael McDonald. I'm the CEO for the West Suburban Community Pantry. We're based in Woodridge. And this is Judy Picorni, and Judy's one of our board of directors. And we just wanted to come out and introduce ourselves and have a couple of things to say for you very briefly. And thanks for giving this time to us to update on what's happening at the West Suburban Community Pantry. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the pantry, we're based in Woodridge, and we offer food for the hungry and resources to empower persons to improve their quality of life. Our vision is a community without hunger. We serve all of DuPage County, and eligible households can currently receive a full order of food, which includes meat, eggs, milk, fresh vegetables and fruit, bread, and various assorted non-perishable items on a twice-a-month basis. And it's usually about 125 pounds of food that they get on each stop that they come to the pantry. We're very proud of that. Additionally, any household in the state of Illinois can come to us in an emergency for a one-time distribution of food. Most people do not know that. In 2014, we distributed more than 1.6 million pounds of product to 49,612 persons, including 19,808 children and 5,439 senior citizens. The point I wanted to make for you tonight is that many of the clients that we have are your neighbors, and you might not even know it. In the last 5 years, 5,528 Downers Grove households have received sustenance towards our ultimate goal of nourishing our neighbors in need, for a total of 16,052 people, including 4,759 children and 2,448 seniors. Some have come only once, many others multiple times based on extended need, but nonetheless, that need is staggering. We need your help in getting the word out about us, whether it be advocating or volunteering, holding a food drive like the Downers Grove Library does for us every year, or knowing that for every dollar we receive, we can purchase $6 worth of food. Every little bit of assistance we get brings us one step closer to alleviating unnecessary issues of hunger in our community. Finally, the West Suburban Community Pantry offers other supporting programming in the following areas, such as school breakfast and weekend backpack distribution to the kids, school supplies, car seat safety classes and distribution, and ESL classes, and now senior home delivery as well, as we have our first senior that lives in Downers Grove that's taken advantage of the senior box program that we have. We also have several major fundraising events, with our next being our third annual Drive to End Hunger golf outing on July 14th at Seven Bridges. It's emceed by Chet Kopic and featuring other celebrity guests. In addition, there are many other friend-raising activities throughout the year to promote our mission, some being right here in Downers Grove, one of which I'll let Judy explain to you. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Judy Picorni. I've been a resident of Downers Grove for 26 years. I've been both a volunteer at the pantry as well as now a board member. And I'm running a campaign called Fill the Bus campaign. It'll be basically a food drive, and it's September 21st to the 26th. I've been working with some of the Downers Grove schools who've already committed to us, like Center Cass 66. The superintendent there has committed, as well as Downers Grove District 58, which is, many schools in Downers Grove. And then finally, I am talking to Downers Grove North and South. Don't have a commitment yet from them, but would hope that they provide some volunteers for us to help with this food drive. We have a large school district in Woodridge, as well as Naperville, and Aurora also working on, with us and committing to this, with this food drive, because we provide residents of DuPage County. We are extending our reach to all of the communities that we serve. Downers Grove being in the top 5 of the communities for the number of people that we serve. So we will be working with other churches and businesses, hopefully in Downers Grove as well, and coming to them for help with this food drive. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your
sharing that.
time. And we're going to leave some literature, if we could, over on the side for anybody who's interested in learning more about the pantry.
On the way up, sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Meadow. And the first item I'd like to mention is I'd like to reiterate my suggestion that the village is poorly served by not having a director of community development. And I believe that as you consider your budget and staffing priorities for the next year, you should look into the possibility of hiring someone for that position again.
We can certainly take that up as part of long-range planning at a high level, understanding, of course, there's still a lot of uncertainty with what our budget will be, given the tempest that is brewing in Springfield.
Yes, and I'm hoping that you might even consider the possibility of employing that person during the current fiscal year if you find that your situation is not as dire as it may be. So that was the first item that I wanted to mention to you. The second is a question about this new format. I'm very pleased to see the comment period at the beginning, but my question is in relation to the items of council member new business that appear at the end of the agenda. Is that something for which there will be public comment allowed as an agenda item, or should I make my comments at this time concerning the council member new business?
That's a good question. The intention is to determine whether or not the new business items will go forward and actually become an active agenda item. What I would probably suggest is that should it become an agenda item, that may be the most appropriate point in time. I know on new business, typically in the past, we haven't entertained public comment on it, but I don't know if we've been that strict.
Well, in that case, I would like to make comments at this time, as those are not agenda items at this time.
I mean, they're agenda items in the sense that they're new business items, but they're not active agenda items. So bear with me, we're still working through the new format. But please.
Do you agree that it's appropriate for me to make comments at this time?
I would welcome you making comments at this time.
Thank you.
That'd be good.
I would welcome
Without
those.
agreeing whether they're appropriate or not, I'm welcome.
Thank you. I welcome these new agenda items because I think that they are steps in the right direction. And in particular, I like the idea of the first about the preparation of agendas and the provision of advance written communications about council new business. Secondly, I really do appreciate the second item, motion B, because I think it is important that we not have the sort of deadlock that resulted when the District 58 wanted to have a sign ordinance change, and they couldn't initiate that as a private party. It had to be something that was initiated by the village council. I think that's just an example of how this current arrangement is not serving the village well, and I'd like to go back to the previous arrangement where the staff or private individuals can have a mechanism by which they petition for a text amendment to the village ordinance, zoning ordinance. And the third, item C, I'm very pleased to see this elaboration and clarification of the purpose of the comprehensive plan. I know that you are planning to go back and look at the zoning ordinance in light of the comprehensive plan. And I think that this is a very worthwhile first step to consider as part of that process. I'm also quite interested in what will happen with those ongoing reviews of the historic preservation ordinance and the zoning ordinance. And the last thing that I wanted to mention this evening is I'm hoping that we'll have a status report on the work that's being done to develop a agreement that will permit the maintenance of the buffer areas on Good Samaritan Hospital. This was something that was initiated last year and I believe has been the subject of ongoing meetings at the staff level. I think it's about time for the council and the public to understand where those discussions are at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. I agree at the appropriate point. We should probably find out where things stand in that regard and see what might further be done. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Hearing none, thank you for what was shared. That brings us to item 5, which is our consent agenda. We have a number of items on our consent agenda tonight. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that motion.
Any questions or comments from any members of the public regarding any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Any questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to any items on tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. That brings us to the active agenda. We have 3 items on tonight's active agenda. First, item 6A, do I have a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing an annexation agreement for 502 Hitchcock Avenue?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing execution of an annexation agreement for the property located at 502 Hitchcock Avenue as presented.
I second the motion that was just made.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Roll call. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Jose.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Sorry for the last second there. I just wanted to say I'm glad to see this moving forward and welcome to the village. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Likewise, I heard some good things in conversation in the audience earlier tonight that welcome. We'll look forward to what happens there. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passes unanimously. That brings us to item 6B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance annexing 502 Hitchcock Avenue to the village of Downers Grove, Illinois? First we had the agreement, now the annexation.
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance annexing 502 Hitchcock Avenue to the village of Downers Grove, Illinois as presented.
I second that motion.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the village council? And note that all 3 of these items are related, and we typically will take them in order. You want to have the agreement in place first before you do the annexation. That's just smart process. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter is adopted. So now that the property is annexed to the village of Downers Grove, of course, we want to immediately rezone it. So we'll go to item 6C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance rezoning 502 Hitchcock Avenue from R1 residential detached House 1 district to M1 light manufacturing district?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 502 Hitchcock Avenue as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the council? The R1 was the default zoning category, so now what we're doing is rezoning it to something that would be more appropriate with our planning documents and use of the property. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously and brings us to the end of our active agenda. This brings us to item 7, our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is where items are presented for discussion only. No action will be taken at this time, but they may be voted on at a future point in time. We have a number of items on tonight's first reading or workshop agenda. And for kicking off our informal discussion of these items, custom dictates that we defer to the village manager or his designees to introduce each of the items. So good evening, Mr. Fieldman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you. Our first item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of a motion awarding a contract for drainage improvements near Chicago and Washington. Here to present information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A motion is requested to award a contract for the Chicago and Washington drainage improvements to H. Linden and Sons Sewer and Water, Inc. of Plano, Illinois, in the amount of $367,087. Let's see if I can fix this. Can you just word it? This is the general location of the project. It's in the northwest quadrant of the Washington Street and Chicago Avenue intersection. Next one. This exhibit shows the localized poor drainage area, or LPDA, in the blue pentagram there at the northwest quadrant of the intersection. The existing storm sewer system on Washington Street and Chicago Avenue are undersized, and there is an inadequate inlet capacity to pick up the water and put it into the storm sewer as well. This area fills with water in large storm events and results in the flooding of homes. The village and residents routinely pump water from this area. The proposed project will increase the size of the storm sewers on Chicago Avenue, shown in red, along Chicago and on Washington Street. We'll install new storm sewers within the LPDA to carry water to the sewers in the right-of-way and install new storm sewer inlets to increase the capacity. These improvements will decrease flooding elevations within this LPDA and reduce frequency of street flooding on Washington Street. The improvements are facilitated by stormwater storage that was created on Washington Park, shown in the south part of this exhibit in yellow, where we did add additional detention in that park that addressed problems in neighborhoods like this just to the north. A call for bids was issued and published in accordance with the village's purchasing policy, and 5 bids were received. H. Linden and Sons Sewer and Water was the low bidder, and they have satisfactorily completed similar underground utility projects for the city of Aurora, Villa Park, and DuPage County, and in 2011 they completed the Pershing Avenue storm sewer improvements for the village of Downers Grove. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this project.
Thank you. Any questions from the village council on what's been presented so far? Any questions from the audience? Next item, please.
Okay. I have 3 parking revisions. I thought I would handle them all together, if that's all right. The first one
Absolutely.
is Douglas Street. An ordinance has been prepared to amend a section of the municipal code concerning parking restrictions on Douglas Street, north of Ogden Avenue. This is an exhibit showing this area. The street ends just to the north of these private parking there. The area to the north is not connected to it, the residential area to the north. The purpose of this item is to address parking of commercial vehicles on this short segment of Douglas Road north of Ogden, which serves Scuttlebutt's Restaurant on the east and the AutoZone mini mall to the west. Parking within this right-of-way area contributes to unsafe driving conditions for vehicles, prohibits effective circulation, and interferes with general maintenance along this section of Douglas Avenue. Staff recommended a no parking anytime restriction, a distance of 100 feet on the west side as shown in red, and on north of Ogden Avenue, and 65 feet on the north end of east side of Douglas Avenue, also as shown on this exhibit. The proposed restrictions will improve parking and vehicular movements at this location. This item was presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission on September 10th, 2014, and the commission voted 4-1 to approve this action. I can either present all three, or I'd be happy to answer questions in between if you'd like.
We'll see if there are any questions in between.
All three.
Seeing that there are no questions so far, please proceed.
Sure. This next
You're
item
asking
is...
a question,
Oh,
or you're
no,
saying
no.
proceed?
This next
Yeah,
item
we're
is
gonna hand
a
signal
change
next time.
to the parking restriction on Grand Street between Middle Avenue and Linscott Avenue. This is in the vicinity of Herrick Middle School. There already is considerable parking restriction along this street, and when vehicles are parking and maneuvering for drop-off and pickups in the morning, it significantly restricts movement along the street and makes it difficult to drive through this area. As a result of complaints from residents and people dropping off and pick up students, staff recommended extending the current restriction on this section of Grand Street to no parking. It's currently no parking 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. and it's recommended to extend it to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, so it would include the afternoon pickup as well. This item was presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission on October 8th, 2014. There was discussion with the residents in the neighborhood that this would affect. They were in favor of this change, and the commission voted 5-0 to recommend this change to the parking restriction on Grant Street.
Okay, I guess we'll move right along.
The last item was presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission on April 8th, 2015, and this is in the area of McCollum Park. This is a seasonal parking restriction that's in place from April 1 to November 1 and primarily addresses uses of the playing fields in McCollum Park. It was brought forward to address resident concerns regarding the seasonal on-street parking restrictions about standing vehicles, blocking driveways, and in particular Sunday morning, which with some of the redevelopment in McCollum Park, the hours of active field use has been extended into the earlier morning hours of Sunday. As a result of the meetings and communications with the Park District, staff recommended extending the Sunday parking restriction from noon until 4 to 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is the same as the Saturday restrictions, which more closely matches the field hours that are programmed. In addition, village staff has reformatted the signage to make it more clear to users and has done considerable communication with the Park District and with the clubs that are using the fields to better monitor and communicate with parents and other people dropping off and picking up children in the fields. This recommended change to the parking restriction was unanimously approved by the Transportation and Parking Commission at their April 8th, 2015 meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council on any of these three proposed parking restriction revisions? Commissioner Waldeck?
No questions, just a comment. Items A through D, through the McCollum parking restrictions, I have no problem if you put them on the consent agenda next time since there's no discussion.
Well, we have to wait for the...
Just an FYI.
The opposition that might...
The village attorney, I believe that they can't be because it's an ordinance.
That is correct. Ordinances
Okay.
cannot be placed on the consent agenda, per our
Very good.
rules. Of course, we can amend the rules at any time.
No, I'm fine.
We wouldn't want that to be item of new business 216, would we?
No.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions from the council on any of these three proposed parking changes? Any questions from the audience with respect to any of these three parking changes? Yes, please.
Good evening again. I'm Gordon Goodman, 5834 Middle. My comment is not actually about the substance of the proposed parking changes, but rather it's a comment, a more procedural one, on the agenda preparation. I notice for these three items, exactly the same information is the background for each one, and although they are three separate ordinances with ordinance numbers, those pages, those 2 pages are reproduced 3 times in your packet. I would suggest it might be possible, even though you can't put it on the consent agenda, that you could put a heading on this page that referred to all each of the three items, and then you could reduce the pages from 6 to 2 in your packet. The same thing, the same comment applies to the annexation and rezoning. Again, you had 3 items, an ordinance, 2 ordinances and a resolution, which each have different item numbers, but the same information has been provided to you on 6 pages instead of 2 pages, and I think it would be a good idea, if the attorney doesn't have any objection to that, to consolidate your agenda distribution packet to put all 3 or more items sometimes that have the same background information as a marginal note, rather than to reproduce the pages and waste the paper. Thank you.
Thank you. You might look at that. Of course, I solved that problem by looking at it all electronically. It doesn't matter how many pages there are. But I think with the annexation, but a good suggestion, and probably more for common background for related items than space savings. Although I know with the annexation agreements, they do have to be handled separately, because we have had situations where people will vote differently on different elements of it. So we wouldn't want to have them all in the same fell swoop. And there's also probably the reality of having to actually do them in steps like we did tonight. But I can imagine I actually recall situations where someone would agree to the annexation but would be against the rezoning, for example. So for a practical matter, I think tonight it all worked out fine, but in the past there's been good reason for that. But your comments about common background for different resolutions, there might be something we can do about that.
Good evening, Mayor.
I would say just read them all electronically.
Good evening, Mayor. Bill Roble from 7800 Queens Court in Downers Grove. Michael, could you put up the slide of B, where the revision on Douglas Avenue, parking revisions on Douglas Avenue, where it shows the property. As Nan reported, the recommendations of the Parking Commission, Transportation and Parking Commission, I wanted to identify myself as a dissenting vote. She mentioned that there was one dissenting vote, and I tried to call it to my colleagues' attention, and they didn't agree with me. But I wanted to call it to your attention, since you have the option to look at this drawing a little closer. At that time, I looked at the map, and I see that it's a dead-end street. It's dead-ended to the residential. And when I looked at it, I observed scuttlebutts parking with their trucks and catering outfits, and then there's a limousine service in the building to the right next to scuttlebutts. And the street, as we call it, Douglas, from primary purposes, functions as a driveway for scuttlebutts and the United Limousine Service for their limousines and so forth. It also serves as a driveway to access the auto parts business. I suggested to my colleagues at the time that we suggest to the village to vacate that street. It would relieve us from the responsibility of paving it, of plowing the snow, and would revert to the users of the businesses as a part of their property, in which case they would have to pave it, they would have to snow plow it, because for all practical purposes, it's a street that just functions as a driveway, doesn't go anyplace except into the businesses that use it and their customers. So I just wanted to explain to you why I dissented from that. You might want to consider it. I thought it was a valid point, but my colleagues felt that it would be best to just change the signage and prohibit parking and so forth. But it does exist for the convenience of scuttlebutts and the limousine service, and it's also access to the auto parts. It's the only access to the auto parts. The other one is a right turn only from Ogden Avenue, and there's a cleaners and so forth. So as you go to the west, it's a right turn in and a right turn out, which some people don't respect either. They come in, make a left turn from Ogden Avenue into a right turn only, one of the diamond type facilities. So I just wanted to call this to your attention. I would suggest you might want to take a drive past there before you make a vote next time to see if you have any personal opinions on the same issue. But otherwise, we would put signage up, which has a cost. We would pave it possibly when it needs it, because it's got lots of holes, and there's been a lot of talk about side issues, and there's puddles of water because it's gravel and this and that. So I would think if it were reverted to a private situation, it would relieve the village of many responsibilities. So that's my only statement, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roble, and as I know you know, there's a established village policy for right-of-way vacation, and if the property owners there had an interest in pursuing that, they certainly have an avenue by which they can make that request. Any other questions from the audience with respect to the 3 proposed parking provisions? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7E as in Edward.
Which is consideration of a final plat of subdivision approval with exceptions for the property at 1350 35th Street. And here to present background information on this item is our Planning Division Manager, Stan Popovich.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Make sure I get this right here. Oh, there we go. I'll use the roller ball. I apologize about that. So as Manager Fieldman noted tonight, this is the first request is a plat of subdivision for 1350 35th Street. The property is generally in the northern part of town at the corner of 35th and Saratoga here on the larger map. If we zoom in a little bit, it's outlined here in orange at 35th and Saratoga. The outstanding zoning areas are all residentially zoned. It's a mix of R3, R1, and R2 in this area of the village. If we zoom in a little further, we go right onto the property here at 35th and Saratoga, outlined here in orange. As you can see, it's primarily a wooded area from the east to the west, Saratoga Grove to the north, and then all residential areas to the east, south, and west. The petitioner is proposing to subdivide the current single lot into 7 lots with an outlot. Lots 1 through 7 run, lot 1 is on the east, lot 7 is on the west, and then there's a outlot that has a little bit of a pole there and a larger area in the back for a detention area. The petitioner is requesting a plat of subdivision and requesting 2 exceptions for lots 1 and 2 on the right, here shown in the purple. The exceptions for lot 1 and 2, we require all new lots to be 75 feet minimum width and at least 140 feet deep, which the petitioner is requesting 2 lot exceptions for the easternmost lots to be 70 feet wide. They would still meet our area requirements, which is 10,500 square feet in area, as do lots 3 through 7. Those meet all the width and area requirements. They're requesting these 2 exceptions so we can have, in essence, a 16-foot strip of outlot A on the western half to accommodate stormwater detention, and then an overland flow route on a commonly owned piece of land there. Staff believes the standards for an exception with this proposal are met, as it's needed to provide better stormwater facilities on the outlot and for the subdivision in general. I'd like to review the stormwater at this point and explain how it works a little bit for you. So this is the current topography of the site. Again, 35th Street's here at the bottom. What we have is an approximate elevation of about 720 at the north and then approximately 705 at the bottom, so 15 feet of elevation difference, a good slope here. Saratoga Grove to the north here has 2 detention ponds that were put in the early 80s when this lot was developed. It also has the blue line here is an outlet structure that connects from the pond down to the petitioner's property here, in which overland flow then runs down to the bottom where the village has recently put in 2 inlets, connected pipes to that, run the pipe underneath 35th Street to outlet to down south of 35th Street to a creek that runs past there. So that's the existing configuration. So when it rains, basically the rain falls and we get all of this area going southbound. And you can see the arrows, so that's sort of where the valley is, where the water flows down, all down to these outlets, to these inlets, I'm sorry, and then it outlets to the south, on the south side of 35th Street. So what the petitioner is proposing to do is, and this is rough floor plans that they've provided to us here in gray that shows each lot. Again, we still have the detention basins that are there, and we still have our inlet structures and our outlet structures. So what they're proposing to do is catch all of this water that falls in this area into a detention basin on the outlot. So basically, we catch the majority of this overland flow route and any water off the detention basin of Saratoga Grove into this detention area north of Lot 7. When this begins to fill out, then we would slowly, there's going to be a restrictor in there, we would slowly run that down the west side of the property through a vegetated swale, which would then discharge out into the swale along the right-of-way and then out to the inlet structures and then underneath the road and out. So what we're going to do is we're going to be containing water north of the parcels and then slowly allowing that water to drain out through a vegetated swale where hopefully a lot of that water will be infiltrated into the vegetated area. So that's how we'll catch the majority of the off-site runoff that's coming onto the site currently. For on-site runoff, what's going to happen is we still have the detention basin up there and then the inlet structures and the pipe underneath 35th Street. So all the water that in essence falls in these backyards is going to be run through bioswales adjacent to the homes into the front yards. The petitioner is proposing to install post-construction best management practices, which are typically dry wells or rain gardens in the front yards. So the rainwater from the property would then go into these dry wells or these rain gardens. Any overflow from these areas would then be caught by a series of perforated pipes within the first 15 to 20 feet of the property. And so that water would be contained there. And then additionally, it would be then tied in and restricted to tie into the inlets and the pipes underneath 35th Street. So that again, that water would be detained primarily on site, and anything that runs into the swale will obviously go into the inlet structure underneath the culverts there. So we are really capturing, the petitioner is really capturing the majority of the stormwater that's going to fall off and restricting its access to those inlets and then down onto 35th Street, and then once we're south of 35th, out onto the existing drainage pattern. So we feel the exceptions are necessary to do some good stormwater improvements here that will help the subdivision itself and then also help the residents there. The petitioner is also providing detention easements, stormwater detention easements over the entire outlot, and then also providing stormwater easements over where the piping is going to be located and where some of the other overland flow routes will be located as well. The petitioner will be required to establish a homeowners association for this property. Additionally, then we'll be requiring them to establish a special service area as well, so that if the homeowners association fails to maintain the stormwater detention facilities, the village can come in and maintain those facilities for them. If there's any questions at this point, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you.
Questions from members of the village council? Just a couple of points of clarification for my own benefit. There's only 2 exceptions being requested for lots 1 and 2. It's a 5-foot exception for each lot. And as I understand it, it's so as to create basically a piece of property that would be utilized to support stormwater management.
That's correct. So without the exceptions, the overland flow route on the west side of the property would then in essence be on lot 7, which would be a private lot, and we prefer it to be on an outlot.
Right. So to some degree, the exceptions are being driven by the desire to better manage stormwater in this area.
That's correct.
The exceptions, I don't have a problem with the exceptions for that reason under our criteria. This is a very challenging parcel. It is very steep, as was noted, and if I understood correctly, the stormwater improvements that are being made will not only address the new construction, but will also help the surrounding area that has been a problem for some time.
Yes, it will. The proposed stormwater will address the new construction, and by capturing a lot of the off-site runoff that runs onto this site and then ultimately runs down to 35th Street, by capturing that, we'll be slowing that release rate down and hopefully allowing that to infiltrate.
To the north.
Correct.
Right. And obviously, this is a great example of where the SSA structure for the creation of the detention areas and runoff areas for future maintenance, it works really well. Make sure that there's funding for that maintenance. My only thought is whether we want to build into that somehow, if the system does not operate as desired, only because there will be, I'm guessing, removal of quite a bit of trees and other vegetation in that currently wooded area. If it doesn't operate as designed, might that SSA also, in some degree, be allowed to not only maintain what's there, but actually improve it so as to make sure that it performs as desired? Because it does appear that this is an opportunity to improve the area, but if, despite best efforts, intentions, and designs, it doesn't. I'm just thinking out loud as to whether or not, as part of the SSA structure, we can allow for an opportunity to maybe even provide some funding to not only maintain but to improve, the idea of being to improve so as to meet the required operation of the system. Don't even have that answer today, it's just literally I'm thinking out loud. Other questions from the council? Questions from the audience? Thank you for the presentation. That brings us to item 7F. Is it Frank?
And I will just continue to hand, actually, the rest of the first reading over to Mr. Popovich. Stan?
Thank you, Manager. Go through my notes here, and then we'll switch topics here. I think I figured out this mouse thing now, so hopefully we're good. The next item is a few zoning ordinance text amendments for your consideration. We have two of them. The first one is to allow storage, processing, and distribution of finished consumer-ready products as a special use in the OR zoning district. And the second set of revisions and text amendments are to Article 9 and Article 13. That would be signs in the administration and enforcement. So the first one is the OR district text amendment. The OR districts are generally at 31st and Highland, and then there's a single property over by the Esplanade that's also zoned OR. These properties are typically our Class A office spaces in these locations. The proposal is to allow as a special use, in essence, the storage, distribution, and processing of finished consumer-ready products. So this would fall under a warehousing category in our zoning table, Table 5-1, which the key thing here is that we are not going to allow, we're not trying to allow widgets that are going to be put into other widgets and manufactured on site here. It's really about the distribution of finished products. What we've had is we reference here Table 1, and then we reference Section 6.180, which is a new section shown in the packet, which we have developed some performance standards that we can look at when a petitioner comes before us. The application of these standards will limit the size, limit the type of product, limit the distribution methods, so you really can't distribute via a semi-truck. It's really more or less via FedEx trucks, smaller type of materials. Not allow people to come to site and purchase these items, but they all have to be shipped out. It also limits the use of mechanical equipment in the warehousing and storage area. So you can't use automated systems, you can't use forklifts. So really try to integrate this into a business park and into an office building so the impact is minimal on the adjacent tenants and on the adjacent buildings. We've also included in that Section 6.180 some approval criteria in addition to the special use criteria. The first one primarily deals with parking and circulation to ensure that we're not going to create a use or a tenant that's going to increase parking or increase circulation difficulties on the site if there are any, or create them. Again, building suitability to ensure that, if we have a jet engine, that the hallways can get the jet engine through there. It's not going to be in this location, but in terms of that, so if they're on the third floor, are these little boxes that are going out, or are these big things that we need a freight elevator for? Is the building suitable? And then also to look at environmental factors. Is it noise? Is there vibrations? Are there odors? Those items too. So staff and the village council then have a little bit more teeth into what we approve and our approvals of those processes that way through the special use. So we believe, as drafted, the proposed text amendment would meet the intent of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance standards for a text amendment. The next couple of ones have to do with Article 9, which is our sign ordinance. The first amendment in Section 9.060 amends the downtown business, downtown transition, and Fairview Concentrated Business District. When we revised the zoning ordinance, there were a few things in there that moved around for some clarification. What happened was the requirement to have an address on a monument sign or freestanding sign in the downtown business was removed from this area. We do require it, so we've put it back in there, so we actually have that in the ordinance now. The second provision in the text amendment for the signs is the enforcement. There's a couple of provisions about enforcement when signs are required to have a 24-hour removal versus a 10-day removal. So if a sign was up without a permit, typically if it's a permanent type sign, like a monument sign or a wall sign, we provide a 10-day removal period because that's not something that you can go out and take away. Temporary signs, so if that was somebody was having a sale and they put out signs, plastered their frontage with a lot of signs, we give them 24 hours to remove those items. So we've clarified those provisions. It was a little confusing in the rewrite of the zoning ordinance how those provisions came about and whether the 24-hour notice applied or whether the 10-day notice applied. So this will clarify those provisions for us as well. The last text amendment proposed is section 13.020, which is our enforcement section for the zoning ordinance. We're clarifying the location of fines. Again, when we revised the zoning ordinance last year, we referenced the user fee and fine and license schedule. That schedule it's an administrative document, has no fines in it. So we've then clarified that the fines are actually in Chapter 1, so we're providing that recommendation to put that back in so that it's clear there where the fines are. Again, the sign and the enforcement provisions meet all the intents of the comp plan and then the standards for a zoning ordinance text amendment. If there's any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer this for you.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions or comments from council? Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, but you did take me back to law school with the widgets reference. That was pretty good. I wanted to...
Only in Blackacre.
I wanted to thank staff and the Plan Commission, the EDC for supporting the change with regard to the warehousing seems to be where it fits into the nomenclature in our code, but I see this more as something that's sort of e-commerce friendly, allowing folks to have that sort of activity where you don't have any walk-up retail, but you're shipping things out, typically, like you said, with FedEx, UPS, that sort of thing. I think it's a business-friendly change. I'm glad to see it come forward and look forward to implementing it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? On the warehousing change, for lack of a better word, we have a couple of protections. One is through the normal special use process, which is if the limits of the special use criteria are not being met, no longer being met, we have the ability to revoke the special use and cease the activity if assemblage is going on, for example. And then on top of that, there's another layer of protection with the additional criteria that are being proposed to be built in here. So I think that helps in terms of identifying if there's activity that's going on that is not consistent with these restrictions, which I think all makes sense in order to allow the activity to take place. I concur with Commissioner Jose that it's certainly very business friendly, and actually I'd be curious to know of actual instances of either this attracting new business to Downers Grove or facilitating business that's already in Downers Grove to do more, since we do pride ourselves on being facilitators and not regulators. If this is a proactive request that's being made in order to be more business friendly, if there are existing businesses in town that have basically said, we'd like to do more in your community, we had this opportunity. Again, don't need those details tonight. I think this makes sense, but I think it's something I'd like to keep an eye on so that when we make changes, we can then measure what their effectiveness has been in terms of enhancing our economic base.
You may recall, Mayor and Council, that this was brought to us by an existing business, Pro Stock Hockey, who was running an operation that was consistent with what you see here and operating very well in a Class A office space, and we worked with them and the council to craft this language, and we think it fits our community very well and is a great example of what you just talked about, facilitate, not regulate. We will work with the rest of the business community to make sure they're aware of it, and if we have other success stories because of this change, we will inform all of those involved.
I think it's important that we report that out later on, because I knew exactly what you were talking about, which is why I made the question. But I think we want to be able to tie these kinds of changes to the benefits, what the returns are on making them. We have one example. If there are more, I think we ought to take pause at some point in time and identify those as well. Any questions or comments on any of these proposed text amendments from members of the audience?
Hi, Mayor. Bill Roble, 7800 Queens Court, Downers Grove. I was, like yourself, when I was looking at the proposal here at the text amendment, it was quizzical in my mind, is what was the driver? And I was happy to hear Manager Fieldman's comments that satisfied part of my inquiry, because I felt that Mike Casta was probably had his fingers in there someplace. And as long as it's, it's done nicely, it obviously was not initiated by staff per se. I don't think staff took up but it was initiated by a request from an active business and to expand the flexibility of our zoning. So I think our Manager Fieldman answered my question like he probably answered yours too. So I just wanted to comment.
Sometimes my questions look like softballs.
That comment, I mean, the clarification was what I was going to ask about, but I wanted to say I appreciate the dialogue. And answered my question before I had a chance to answer it. Ask it, I should say.
I'm going to keep seeing if I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments in the audience? Terrific. Next item, please.
This one's mine as well. We have a rezoning request for 4933 Rose Avenue. Rose Avenue is on the west side of town, just north of Burlington Avenue and the railroad tracks, just south of the golf course. Property is currently zoned R1, shown here. You can see a lot of the area is residential in nature. This is a part of the area that was annexed in January 1st of 2012, where it automatically comes in as R1, as you've noted tonight, Mayor, in the previous petitions. The petitioner is requesting a rezoning to R4, basically because the property as it currently exists is 50 feet by 125 feet. The R1 zoning district requires 100-foot wide lots and a lot more depth and a lot more area. The R4 zoning district requires only a 50-foot wide lot and 7,500 square feet. So the rezoning from an R1 classification to an R4 classification will more closely align the existing lot size with the actual zoning classification that's most appropriate. The proposed rezoning does comply with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval of this, as did the Plan Commission. If there's any questions I can answer for you, I can be happy to do that at this time.
Thank you. Questions from members of the council? Members of the audience? Not on this one.
All right.
All right, to 7H.
The next one before us is a Plan Unit Development Amendment and Special Use Request for 1200 75th Street. This property is at the far south side of the village, here at the corner of 75th and Lamont Road. As you can see from our zoning map, and when you zoom in here, the property shown in yellow, it's surrounded by commercial developments, Downers Grove on the northeast and west, and then to the south, I believe that's Darien, and Woodridge to the south of us there. And then if we zoom in a little bit more, here's the current site. It's home to a BP gas station and a Dunkin' Donuts interior restaurant. If we look at the existing site in the blue-gray, the building is towards the north property line, top of the screen. The rectangle in the middle of the site is the gas canopy there for the pump islands. The green is landscaped green space, and then the white is the parking area. To the east side, the right side of the screen, is the exit out onto Lamont Road. You cannot go northbound on Lamont. There's a barrier curb there. And then an entrance onto 75th Street is shown at the bottom of the screen there. Again, that's a right-in only and a right-out only based on the barrier curb there at 75th Street. So those are the existing conditions. This development was approved in 2009 and built a few years after that then as well. The petitioner is proposing to install a drive-through lane shown here at the northwest corner of the property. It would have a clockwise circulation starting at the sort of the center of the site on the west side, circulating to the north with an order board adjacent to the north property line, circulate around to a drive-through window at the southwest corner of the property. The proposal would then bisect the existing 12-space parking lot in front of the Dunkin' Donuts and BP convenience store there. The petitioner is proposing to revise the concrete sidewalk so it juts out and then have a cross path, a crosswalk across with a stop sign and a stop bar, Additionally, they would then also have a fence. This is the picture of the proposal that the petitioner has provided to us tonight. The petitioner is also, with the proposal, we're be relocating the dumpster enclosure, so it currently is north of the parking lot, where the drive-through is. It would be located now west of the canopy there. It would be enclosure like it is currently, and then the air pump would also be relocated in that way and over that area along with the vacuum. The drive-through, they're requesting 2 deviations. The current zoning ordinance requires a 25-foot setback for all drive-through lanes from adjacent property lines. They're requesting a deviation on both sides there. It's about 1.5 feet off of the north property line, and it's quite a bit further, but not 25 feet off the west property line. Staff does have multiple concerns, safety concerns with the request. This is a little image that we've prepared just to sort of show some of staff's concerns. The first shows, which will be here in yellow circled, is some pedestrian and potentially the drive-through customer conflicts, how the pedestrians have to maneuver around the fences and then right in front of the drive-through lane. The second conflict really has to do with this green truck being parked in the gas pump island and how they interact on a head-to-head basis here if they're pulling out. Additionally, the concern comes up if there's a trailer attached to the truck and the truck is sticking out like this, then we could potentially block traffic. A third concern is when there are parking spaces occupied on either side of the exit lane, the interaction with people backing out from the left and from the right of that. Additionally, if those spaces are filled, it potentially has the potential to create a cone of vision, inhibiting vision for the drive-through user to see traffic going east and west through the site. And then finally, again, some conflict east and west if there's that cone of vision, as I just mentioned. Based on staff's safety concerns, we do not believe that it meets Section 7.130, which are specific standards for drive-through facilities. We don't believe the proposal provides adequate on-site maneuvering or circulation area for pedestrians or vehicles. So we don't believe that is met. We also, when reviewing the plan development standards in the zoning ordinance 12.040C6, I believe, we do not believe the safety concerns, in essence, then do not meet these 4 standards as drafted in the staff report. Additionally, when we look at the special use standards, the first one is met because a drive-through is a permitted special use in the B2 zoning district where this property is located. We do not believe that it's in the best interest of the village or in the public convenience, and it doesn't contribute to the welfare based on safety concerns and issues, and then as well that it won't be detrimental. We believe that there are safety concerns here. So staff does not support the request. The Plan Commission did recommend positively on a 4-2 vote for this petition. If there are any questions that I can answer at this point, I'd be happy to answer those for you at this time.
Mayor, I do believe the petitioner is here, and they may want to address some of these items.
Sure. I'd be happy to invite the petitioner up to speak now, or if you'd rather wait to hear what some questions are of staff, entirely up to you. But if you'd like to the petitioner would like to make a presentation now, you're more than welcome to, and we can hold our questions until afterwards. Good evening.
Good evening. Mayor, village council members, village manager, staff, thank you for your time. My name is Patrick Romer. I'm a small business owner, a husband, father of 3 boys, and proud resident of the local community. I'm the owner of the Dunkin' Donuts project before you today. It's a tough and competitive environment, and someone who's mortgaged his home and works the budget to the penny, I don't have a ton of money or a public relations budget for a slick presentation. This talk will be plain and simple, and I promise you one thing about this talk. It will be very, very short. If you decide to approve this project, which the planning board did with a 4-2 vote, this action would directly create 5 new jobs in a convenient and effective way for Downers Grove customers to purchase our coffee, as well as additional revenues for the local community. The Dunkin' is currently losing money, and my only chance to continue to operate it is if I'm able to create a drive-through. A small business owner and the council, the village council, have one big thing in common. To be successful, we must listen, and we must listen well. We have approximately 230 residents come through our Dunkin' per day. They're consistently asking us to try and secure a drive-through to make their commute just a little easier. This is what they want.
We asked our customers if they wanted a drive-through, and they responded with a resounding yes. We've collected 311 signatures. I believe I've got an exhibit for those, that you may have those in front of you. I've got the originals with me as well, if you'd like to verify that, via a petition that I'd like to leave with you. We started asking the residents to begin signing on Friday. I think we could double or triple this amount if needed, because we only had 3.5 days to ask folks if they were interested in signing, and they were. In signing these petitions, we heard two overwhelming concerns. The first were desire for convenience so they'd start their day quickly. The second was around the history of the site. Many seemed confused as to why there wasn't a drive-through on this site when the previous BP had a Dunkin' with a drive-through as well. They remembered that it worked well for all parties. I'm not the owner of the gas station, simply a tenant. There is some history between the owner and the planning staff that precedes my presence. I have asked the architect of this site, Eric, to address the points around the planning staff's concerns around perceived congestion. He will point out several more sites right next to our site that are much more congested. And you'll also see they've not done what we're proposing. We're proposing to mitigate in 4 different ways. We're proposing to stop signs, gates, fences, and barriers. You'll see none of those sites have stop signs, gates, fences, or barriers. In summation, I'd like to paraphrase a Downers Grove Planning Board member who said just before the board voted to approve this site on the evening of May 7th. He said, and I'm paraphrasing him, and if you go back to the record, you'll see it's a very, very close paraphrase. He said, quote, "This may not be perfect, but the residents will figure it out. They always do," unquote. Finally, I'm extremely proud of the jobs we create and the people who work with us. 5 jobs may not be the largest project you consider this month in your role, but it's a huge number to me in my small business. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your time and service to this community.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Again, I'm part 2. I'm Eric Carlson, ECA Architects out of Geneva, and I'm the architect with the original building as well as for the Dunkin' Donuts. So I'm involved with the history of the project with the previous owners and the previous developers, and one of the challenges at that early time, Pat alluded to it, but originally he did want to drive through in this location, but they were running out of their special use allotment. The time was running out. The developer and the original gas station owner, who is not the current owner, obviously much more concerned about getting their development in the ground than whether the Dunkin' gets a drive-through. So Pat's intention was to operate, and thought he could, based on the past Dunkin' Donuts on the site, thought he could operate without the drive-through, and as 2 years have gone on, he's realizing that he cannot. And that's kind of the crossroads that we are at right now. I have, yeah. Now let me see if I can figure out the mouse.
Just a few seconds.
Sure.
We can play that video again.
Just don't ask me to sing and dance. Should have been the PowerPoint. PowerPoint? Yeah, there should be a PowerPoint that was open. Who's this one? PDF? Yeah, it's the PDF. All right. Let's see, how do I roll to advance? Is that the secret? Okay. Okay. I wanted to start by just pointing out a couple of the, staff had made comments that that our proposal did not meet the comprehensive plan needs. There's a couple of points on here that I definitely wanted to point out, and this is on your first page of the commercial areas plan. So usually some of the most important information gets put on the first page. and then there's even a breakout of a statement that I'll read. But there's 3 pinpoint items which are highlighted right here. Those pinpoint items say maintain and expand the range of goods and services provided throughout the village. And this is the policies identified in the commercial areas plan are intended to maintain and expand the range of goods and services provided throughout the village, which is what the intent of the drive-through is to expand the services to the customers that 311 people in a few days had signed up saying that they wanted. Item number 2 says strengthen the economy by creating more local jobs. As Pat identified, there'd be 5 jobs created to keep up or to staff the drive-through. Item number 3 was stabilize, diversify, and expand the tax base. Obviously, increase revenue. As 60% of the average Dunkin' Donuts business is drive-through, that should substantially increase the revenue, and Pat is banking on this drive-through to survive. The revenue is critical. Highlighted in green on the first page is an excerpt from this little portion here that says, the primary goal of the commercial area plan is to retain, attract, and expand high-quality commercial retailers, service providers, and employers by addressing the location, size, and appearance of commercial areas. Dunkin' Donuts, as you well know, is a very well-recognized brand. They're a national tenant, or a national brand, the second fastest growing franchise in its category in the United States. They're growing nationally or internationally right now at a very good pace. Losing Dunkin' Donuts would be a sad spot for this location, and a sad spot obviously for Mr. Romer. And I believe that the primary goals of the comprehensive plan are met with what we're proposing here. There's another item in the page 45 of the comprehensive plan in the corridor commercial, which this site is, states that these commercial areas have a unique character and should continue to function in their dual role within the village by serving both the daily needs of the local residents and providing commercial goods and services to the larger region. I think that's evident that with, again, the 311 signatures that were obtained since Friday morning, this is something that the local residents are looking for and services the larger region because of the ease of access. There's no doubt that he's losing customers because of having to stop in, get out of their car, go in, get their coffee. It just takes time. And in the morning, time is not what the average person wants to spend. Oops. Okay. I'm not going to jump through. This is, again, the site plan that we've proposed. As Mr. Popovich had noted, we are asking for 2 variations, which are a deviation from the proposed setbacks of 25 feet from a property line of a drive-through. Regardless of how the site was configured, we wouldn't be able to meet that. What we have, which is perhaps unique, is a L-shaped retail center right behind our property. So the setbacks that we were requesting are right along here and right along here, both 100% screened and protected from anything else to neighboring. Those setbacks are generally in place to provide a buffer zone from a residential district or some other district or some other use that the drive-through might be a negative towards. So in this case, we've got the back of a building. We've made a couple of minor modifications, one of which was brought up at the Plan Commission, where we had previously had a speed bump to help stop traffic, but as we had worked through the process, we realized the speed bump might not be the best thing, as McDonald's might warn us. So we've adjusted the stop sign a little bit. We've moved we still maintain a stop bar, the stop sign, and these were elements that were brought into play because of the initial review from staff and the concern. At one point, we had the sidewalk, the pedestrians crossing at the corner of the building, being sensitive to the blind corner that we were forcing pedestrians to do to move to the other side of the parking. That's where we came up with this idea, which we think definitely services the need because it gives a good 15-foot area for a pedestrian, a vehicle to see each other. Certainly very clear view. You've got a 3-foot high fence, you've got the vehicle there, and the vehicle has a stop sign and a pedestrian crossway. These are all things that are used on a general road, general traffic flow to control traffic, and they will serve that same need at this small site as well. Staff has identified a handful of concerns. We're appreciative of those concerns, and we feel that we've addressed them in an adequate and standard manner. I intend to go through some exhibits of various drive-through sites that have similar type instances that work perfectly fine. Part of the concerns, as you can see here, are vehicles entering and exiting the off-street parking spaces, vehicles trying to access the proposed vacuum and pump stations, garbage trucks trying to access the trash enclosure, vehicles traveling on the access aisle between the building and the pump islands, vehicles entering and exiting the nearby pump islands, pedestrians walking on and abutting the crosswalk. We have one thing that we have done too, based on the Plan Commission's comments, was the parking area over here has been pushed back to create an extra 5 feet of buffer zone, if you will. Those 6 spaces on the west side are primarily going to be parking spaces. There's going to be anywhere from, at the peak time, which again, the Duncan peak time is from 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the morning. So this whole traffic congestion thing that staff is concerned about is really 2 hours a day. It's valid, it's 2 hours a day, but it is only 2 hours a day. The rest of the time, the cars cycle through that drive-through at a much less pace. And there is a traffic study that was submitted, and I have a page from it here that will show the average stacking and the average time through that, which the average time through a Dunkin' drive-through is 90 seconds per person. And so some of the conditions, vehicles entering and exiting the existing parking spaces, no different than what we currently have at the gas station, no different than what most gas stations have. So people are used to that, and the point that we made with the Plan Commission is that gas stations, restaurants, shopping centers, when you enter that as a consumer, you go into these places with a different mindset. If you drive like you do on the road at a shopping center, at a restaurant, at a gas station, the outcome's generally not going to be very good. You're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. So when you go into a gas station, it's kind of an organized chaos. People get to work through the flow. They've got head on a swivel, so to speak, with being conscious of what's around them. So that's where, regardless of the drive-through, this condition is consistent and it works perfectly fine. One of the comments, too, was made with the trash enclosure and its location. We've moved it off to the side. The existing retail center's trash enclosure is right there, so we're basically adjacent to it. Trash pickup is Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays between 5 and 5:30. So again, the window that a garbage truck would have impact to the site is very minimal. It's a couple minutes for the pickup and load, and they're out of there. We've purposely put the pumps and the air vacuum in the parking space adjacent to the trash enclosure for the purpose of the trash enclosure is not going to be full. It's an open space. Somebody can pull in, get completely out of the way and off the site, don't take up any parking spaces, do their thing, and move on. Again, the vacuum and the air pumps, it's not a high volume thing. It's a couple $100 a year, $300 a year, month rather, maybe, that they make on that. So you're probably talking about 8 to 10 cars at most on a day, and that's a busy day. So, and their time, again, in there is very negligible. So we really don't feel that there's going to be any impact from the garbage trucks or any impact from the vehicles that are using the air pumps or the vacs. This is an exhibit showing the garbage truck in and out. So you can see Again, at 5:30 in the morning, you're not going to have 8 cars stacking. Even with the 8 cars stacking, there's no conflict. The trash truck will pull up more or less parallel to or adjacent to the trash bin, roll out the bins, put them in his truck, and head on his way. Staff was concerned with the sight lines in the obstruction of view. I don't think you could do a much better job in giving opportunity for pedestrians and vehicles to have visual communication before they interact physically with each other. So we definitely don't feel that there's going to be anything that's out of the ordinary here. And again, we'll show exhibits of this pedestrians passing drive-through traffic on other sites that are much less controlled than what we have. Stop sign, stop bar, pedestrian walkway, fencing, plenty of indicators to avoid any conflict. Another point that I want to make is the handicap stall. The handicap stall is closest to the one island too. And again, we're talking about 1 or 2 parking spaces over there that are not going to be employee used. So we're not talking a high volume of people who are going to be using that crosswalk. But the handicap stall, again, the least used stall of any parking lot is right next to there, so that does create that buffer from the oncoming traffic that would be coming through this direction. Again, 90% of the time this is an open space, so you've got a good visual triangle from anybody who would be coming in that blind spot that staff was concerned about. So again, I think we've got a really good condition there. Parking analysis, I think you have a copy of this. I won't spend a lot of time on it, and it's hard to read here anyway. But the average stacking or the peak stacking is no more than 8. It's 6 to 7 people at peak time, and that's pretty standard with most Dunkins. This is not projected to be a super high volume Dunkin', even with the drive-through, compared to some of the other Dunkins that I've worked on. So the 7 or 8 would be very practical. I think it was represented in staff's comments that the sites identified here were not similar to this site, maybe not in flow, but in volume and in traffic and in revenue, and all of the signs that this represents are going to be very consistent with a Dunkin'. Gewalt Hamilton does many traffic studies for Dunkin' Donut franchises, and they know their stuff when it comes to that. And again, they don't see any issues with this. They deal with it regularly. I've dealt with them on probably nine projects myself. I want to talk about congestion. You know, in general parking congestion, go back to the comment that I made earlier, that you go into these things, it's a different mindset. The reality is people figure it out. We've got conditions where you've got aisle next to retail building, consumers park, walk across the busy lane into the retail center. You've got conditions here where people park, they have to walk across another busy lane of two-way traffic, and they're also coming out and facing each other, and we'll go through some other exhibits there, and then a couple other exhibits here. I do have these blown up so we can look at them more depth. What's yeah.
Just want to point out real quick, this is what we're talking about,
right? Right. This is our site.
This is the Dunkin' we're at right now. This is the different comparisons. We just want to show you which are about 500 to 700 yards away from the current site.
Right. The points that I'm going to make are going to be applicable anywhere, but just evident to how frequently they happen. We've got all of these conditions exist right in this local area. Oops. Okay. Okay. So here's the different exhibits, and I've got arrows representing the different flows of traffic for each of these different scenarios. And again, we'll go through these in larger exhibits. But in each of these examples, you've got cars that are going to be backing out and going a direction. You've got cars that are backing out and going a direction. Heaven forbid they happen to back up at the same time. I think we've all experienced that when you're in a parking lot and you've got somebody who's backing up next to you, and of course you have to pay attention, you have to be conscious. If you're not, you're going to get in an accident. You've got this condition, these people are turning left, you've got two-way traffic coming in both directions, these people are coming in while this person is trying to pull out and back up. Similar condition to what we had. Here's the condition where you've got an aisle in a retail center. You're going to have those center aisles, those aisles that are adjacent to the storefronts. The traffic flow is going to be significantly faster than they are at a gas station. Gas stations, traffic is very slow. We've all witnessed, and probably are guilty of it ourselves, driving a little faster down these center lanes than we should. We've got, again, people coming in and out of traffic, backing up, turning left, turning right, going straight, crossing into the other traffic, to the other parking lot, all kinds of congestion and chaos that could potentially happen there. Is it every day? No. But a busy Saturday, holiday season, absolutely. When these parking lots are full, yes. The exhibit we showed, it's a fairly low-volume retail center, but put this in a different area, it's extremely busy.
We can move on to this slide. Let's keep this up here real quick. So this is ours. When I first saw planning staff's presentation, boy, that was a great presentation. I was impressed by the animation. I was impressed by a lot. I looked at the arrows myself for our site. I said, man, I wouldn't vote for it either. But then I looked at other sites, 500 yards from our site, and I saw more arrows. I saw more arrows, and I saw more arrows than our site. I thought, we got to compare apples to apples. And that's all I'm planning on making. That's fine. You can move on there.
Right. And these are consistent. The same rules that I applied to our site, which is the upper left site, are exactly the same as the principles. The arrows are identical in form. So I'm not taking arrows out of our site to make it look better. You can play around with it. But here's the condition. This is, again, the retail front here. You've got many people crossing at no given point, no identified crossing to go to the retail center. On our site, we have one location. We cross basically right at the drive-through, and that's a marked area with vehicle control. These have no vehicle control, faster vehicles, and you're forced to walk through those. Exhibit 2 was a blow-up of the same one. And again, this does happen on busy retail centers, busy days. There are people that park back here and walk across the busy aisle to the establishment, retail establishment. Again, some of these parking islands have trees obscuring this backup view and obscuring these things. Again, a very common thing to put the trees in planter islands. So again, our condition is, in my mind, significantly better than what you're going to find out at many other establishments. Here's across this.
Not to interrupt you,
yeah.
but I think we get the point.
Okay. All right.
That there are other facilities that, in your view, are more congested or more problematic than the one that's on the table.
Right.
Well, I just want to spare you the time of having to go through each one.
I will show this last one too, because this one has a very similar condition. This is right through here. It's onward-facing traffic going into parking spaces, which in ours we would consider our parking spaces are gas islands, flows going both way, divided parking, and traffic going two ways here as opposed to one way, which is what our site shows. And again, we're controlled, we're stopped here. You're not moving when you're making that connection. In case you're wondering, this is the truck. When I look at our site plan and I place these vehicles, this is the truck that I used. It's a 19.5-foot Monster Dodge. The gas tank is 14 feet back from the front. It's a pretty good sized truck, about as big as you're going to get on this site. I have a boat. I pull my boat. I go to the river. This is not the gas station I'm looking for to pull my boat. Or if I have a trailer, I'm going to look for a gas station where I can pull my trailer. I'm going to pass by this one, so it's not really a big concern. If you're pulling into here with a trailer, you're going to pull right out. It's not the site for you, as is many other sites.
Not going to sell out a coffee to the boat crowd.
Right, maybe the fishing crowd. But so anyway, so what I'm pointing out here is that we have 27 feet from this island to the front of that 19.5-foot vehicle. 27 feet is 3 feet larger than a two-way aisle. Two-way aisle is 24 feet. So even if that car blows past the pump 3 feet, he's still within a normal aisle of two-way traffic flow. Plenty of distance for this car at a stop sign to pull out and navigate that site. Same thing over here. One of the slides that staff had showed was there was some truck sticking way out here. That condition is not really going to happen. If you got two people facing each other at a stop, you hope somebody's going to be courteous and let somebody go instead of continue to run into each other. This is where we increase that back 5 feet, so we have over 30 feet in that particular location, just to soften that up. Parking. People just figure it out. How can you can't really identify how traffic's going to flow in these conditions. You got traffic sites all different ways, all different directions.
I want to be sensitive to the council's time frame. Can we just kind of wrap up with a couple of the Dunkin' Donuts slides? And I promise we'll take a minute and a half left. Is that fair?
That's fine.
Okay.
More than that. Okay, I'll see what I can do. This is a standard.
Committed you to 90 seconds, so that's what.
Yeah, right, I'll try to do it in Dunkin' time. This is a standard McDonald's, parking around the perimeter. Pedestrian in McDonald's is certainly going to be far busier than the Dunkin' Donuts. People park here, they walk into the McDonald's. Sometimes they have crosswalks, sometimes they don't. This one does not. I guess over here, but I don't know what that is. And again, so it's a flow. People are walking in front of that traffic all the time, significantly bigger. We don't feel we have any different condition. And again, we're stopped. Here's some unique drive-throughs just around the Chicago area. Loops around, picks up, and heads out into the parking lot. It's a perfectly reasonable, functional flow. This works very well. This one's a little quirkier. You come in, you loop around, and then you come out through there around those little parking spaces. Here's another one, Schiller Park. I'm personally familiar with this one. Drive-through very similar to ours. You come in along here, pick up your stuff, and you exit out. Bisected parking that was referenced by staff. This one also has a car wash, so you're bringing two types of traffic through here. Car wash exit out, and look at it swings right across here, comes over here, right into where the right in only is. So you've got a decent volume of traffic on Manheim. You've got the car wash exiting over here. Traffic coming in, negotiating the site, very, very busy site, functions just fine. I know the owner of this, there has not been any accidents in the parking lot, everything works fine. Added to this, you've got ATM drive-through and you've got Poland drive-throughs. So you've got all kinds of traffic and flow happening on this site, and it works just fine.
And again, I think we get the point that there are other equally, if not more challenging configurations that exist in the real world, and I think all the members of the council can bring their own life experiences to bear upon.
Right. Agreed. Last one I want to show is, this one is, again, there was a reference to bisecting traffic, bisecting parking. This is a car wash drive-through. Again, this is right in Downers Grove, right down the street on Main Street, where similar thing, bisects that parking. Other quirky sites, and again, gas stations just work. The end. Thank you. Sorry for being long-winded.
That's all right. Thank you for expediting that.
Questions?
Well, now I'm going to open up to questions from the council. Questions from the council on either the staff report or on the presentation by the petitioner. Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. This Dunkin' Donuts is in my neighborhood. And usually when you have a drive-through, and you think I'd be thrilled because, having a drive-through and the way I look, I'd be jumping up and down to have a drive-through Dunkin' Donuts.
I think you signed the petition.
I don't think so. And usually, as stated, when you talk about drive-throughs, it's usually noise, time of service, impact on the residents. We don't have that here. And oddly enough, we have a lot of parking in the area, but just not on this site. When I first became aware of this coming before us, I was concerned even before I got the staff report, because I go to 63rd and Cass, which is strictly a Dunkin' Donuts. There's no gas station or anything else competing with it. It's strictly a Dunkin' Donuts. And it isn't within the busy times that you had stated. Actually, it's later on Sunday. And there are times there are more than 8 cars stacked up, easily. Sometimes you park, you can't get out of there. And at times, it even has backed up to 63rd Street. So there's a lot more than 8 cars stacked up. Service is generally slow. You go inside, and whether you're in the driveway or outside, it's obvious things are kind of slow. And I think comparing it to the Dunkin' Donuts that was at that site years ago, I wasn't even aware it had a drive-through at that time. You have a more complex menu, and McDonald's and Wendy's and all these types of places they're getting into a little more complexity, and they're starting to slow up. But generally speaking, that's fast food. And I really don't consider Dunkin' Donuts fast food when you're in a very short line for a very long time. I wish it was 90 seconds. I wish it was 2 minutes. It seems to take a very long time. It isn't just getting a burger, it's getting a donut with or without sprinkles, whether it's chocolate this or that. You got various types of coffee, and if somebody has a sandwich, service gets all backed up. And so I had very serious reservations based on the traffic control, just on a plain Dunkin' Donuts. And then I got the staff report, and I still have, it gave me more pause. So I have a lot of concerns. I'll review the presentation to make sure, I got all the elements. But I will be considering all of that because I do take staff's safety concerns very seriously, and especially on 75th and Lamont, which is a very, very busy intersection. I'll look at it, but if I had to take a vote tonight, I wouldn't go for it. I just don't believe in 90 seconds. I don't believe in an 8-car stack, and I think it's way too complex for having a drive-through in that situation. But I will look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it made me think of something. I should know this. The Dunkin' Donut that's at 75th and Lamont is just Dunkin' Donuts, or do you have a Baskin-Robbins facility there too?
Just Dunkin'.
Yeah, the one at 63rd and Cass is a Baskin-Robbins dual flag, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah, the ice cream slows things down.
Well, not on Sunday at 11, I'm sorry. No, the hours of congestion were...
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, but I mean, I forgot to mention the major hours of operation include later on Sunday, too.
I'm not undermining any of your concerns. I just wanted my own mind to know the difference between the two businesses.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, when I initially looked at this, it was looked at in isolation. The traffic conflict reports can seem pretty hair-raising. But then I started looking at countless other drive-thrus we have throughout the Downers Grove area. The Steak and Shake on Ogden Avenue, the drive-up lane goes right in front of the front door. That was approved. There was McDonald's put up here. There was McDonald's, I think maybe Hillside. But the McDonald's just west of Fairview Avenue on Ogden, all of the parking is outside of the drive-through lane, both coming in and going out. The observation that most of the pedestrian conflict will be with employee parking really causes me a lot of, it causes me to help support this. But in my mind, the number one comparable is the Starbucks on Ogden, which I use very, very often. And quite frankly, I have problems with it. But I went back and looked at the staff report and the deliberation this council made not that long ago, and none of this was done. None of this conflict was brought up in that context. So I have a hard time telling this fellow no, when very recently we told Starbucks yes. I just don't see a big difference between those cases. And it is a matter of discretion, not of right, but that, quite frankly, that's my opinion.
I'm surprised it wasn't one of your examples, actually. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I think your description early on of kind of a controlled chaos is spot on. We can go through lots of lists. I mean, 2-lane wide, sit and wait with parking on the opposite side down the hill at Portillo's is not exactly what you'd call ideal either. But it functions fine because in reality, people do sort it out for themselves in a parking lot. I just don't see any compelling public the purpose for the council denying this request for deviation. I just don't. I know, I understand what the existing ordinance says, and I'm not quarreling particularly with staff's interpretation of it, but I don't see an overriding public benefit that would be supported or enhanced by denying the deviation. So I intend to support this, and I'm hopeful that it passes, and frankly, wish you the best of luck.
Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't necessarily disagree with much of what's been said here from the last couple of speakers. There are obviously conflicts here. You've got pedestrian concerns. I think you've taken good steps to try to mitigate those. And the vehicular conflicts, when it comes down to it, if there are problems with folks getting into and out of the site, getting blocked by extra cars in the queue from getting out of their parking spot or away from the gas pumps, ultimately, residents and other customers are going to vote with their feet and with their dollars, and they'll shop someplace else or buy their gas someplace else, get their coffee someplace else. And I think the traffic conflicts at that point will tend to resolve themselves. So I agree that is this the perfect drive-through? No. Do we have other similar difficult drive-throughs in Downers Grove and in the surrounding area? Yeah, we do. And I'm not sure this is all that much different. Obviously, it's a challenging site, but it's one I think we can trust the residents and the customers to figure out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just to pick up on your point, only because there was about a year and a half when that other business located in that other town that I won't mention, had to go down there quite a ways, which is why I know it was also Baskin Robbins. And when it was backed up, I just kept driving. So to your point, that's typically what happens. If that backed up, then you're going to lose business. People just won't pull in. Questions from the audience? We do have a question from the audience.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. My name is Anthony Rosario, and I'm a sophomore from Downers Grove North High School. My one concern with the project, and my one thought was that Dunkin' Donuts serves as a business in which high school students go to within the time frame of 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning. They usually buy coffee or donut or some kind of sandwich. My main concern was when you get a high school student to drive through this drive-through with the numerous conflicts down there, high school students aren't necessarily the best drivers compared to most people. My concern was just the safety of the driver and other drivers with a high school student going down there. But seeing the alterations, I feel that the concerns were met, and I think that this is a good option for the drive-through. That's it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Final thoughts or questions from council? Hearing none, okay.
Thank you, Mayor. That ends our first reading tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion and presentation. That brings us to item 8, the mayor's report. We have one item on the mayor's report tonight, and that pertains to the last election. We don't actually talk about elections very often, but in this case, as folks know, there was a referendum that was on the last election on April 7th that was a citizen-initiated petition with respect to the following question: shall the village of Downers Grove spend $46 million or more to construct a new village hall, police station, and fire station? I think at this point in time, most everyone knows what the outcome of the election was. Approximately 87.6% of the folks that voted in the April 7th election answered that question no. So what we wanted to do was just simply report out to sort of where things are at with respect to the facilities proposal that was on the table last year. Obviously, the petition-driven referendum question has been answered, the votes have been cast, the results are known, and the folks have spoken with respect to the question that was put to them. But I think that the process that led up to and culminated in the election told us a lot more than just those numbers that make up the 87.6%. I think that there were a number of things that came out of the process. Number one, that there was a large number of people within the community that either were unclear or uncertain about what the proposal was about, had concerns about the cost, had concerns about the risk, had concerns about the complexity. And there was just an overall feeling of uncertainty and concern. So where that leaves us, and we had previously stated that as part of the uncertainty that exists in Springfield in terms of what the budget will look like if we ever get a budget this year from the General Assembly and the Governor, and how that may impact the Village of Downers Grove and our revenues, we have to be cautious in how we proceed with major projects. I think it is fairly clear to say, and should be said, that with all the different things considered, that the proposal was on the table last fall, last winter, however you want to measure it, is off the table. But the issue has not gone away. We still are faced with some facilities challenges that need to be addressed. They were last proposed to be addressed in 2007. The recession was the problem then. They haven't gotten any better in the last 8 years. In fact, they've gotten worse. We have an issue that we need to address, so we may be starting from the beginning again, and this time wanting to work as part of our long-range planning process and bring the community along with us, and something that the consensus of the community can support. But there still is some uncertainty out there in terms of what Springfield will do, and uncertainty in other regards as well. And I just personally want to mention that I think uncertainty is both cause for pause, but it's also a call for action. What we need to be mindful of is that as time passes, the cost of money can increase greatly. And so what might cost us $10 today, if we do not take prudent action in a timely way, can cost 15 or 20 down the road for the same thing. There are other opportunities that may exist today in terms of funding strategies. There are things that Springfield may do that may affect our bond rating. There are circumstances that may shift that may actually drive up the cost of even doing something that, for example, was focused solely upon the police station, which is probably the highest priority, at least in my opinion, what we need to address. So we just wanted to report out as part of the mayor's report that what was on the table last year is off the table, but the problem has not gone away. It is a clear and present issue that needs to be addressed, and it's the obligation of this community to do so, and we will do so as a community. And the current expectation is to do that as part of the long-range planning process that will begin next month. So that brings us to item 9, the manager's report. Manager Fieldman.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
I think I took your time. Item 10, attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. Several items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance amending parking restrictions at the McCullum Park area, Douglas Avenue, and Grant Street. An ordinance amended certain provisions of the Downers Grove zoning ordinance. An ordinance rezoning 4933 Rose Avenue. An ordinance amending Plan Unit Development Number 9 with deviations to allow the construction of a drive-through facility at 1200 75th Street, and an ordinance authorizing a special use for 1200 75th Street to permit the construction of a drive. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Brings us to item 11, council member reports. Start with Commissioner Barnett. Good evening.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Jump back to Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner White.
A brief report. Last week I attended the first meeting of the Community Events Commission. I was very impressed with the staffing of that meeting. I was very impressed with the citizens that serve on that committee, on that commission. I think they do an excellent job, and I look forward to working with them in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Olson.
No report.
I will just add that since we will not meet until then, I think on behalf of the council and everyone here at Village Hall, I wish everyone a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. I believe that the American Legion and the VFW are having their typical Memorial Day observation that takes place in Fishel Park at the usual time. I'm sure details will be available soon. I know I've received a notification of it. I believe it'll be at the same time, same place, and it's a terrific ceremony that the American Legion and the VFW put together in observance of Memorial Day, obviously a very important day for all of us here in Downers Grove and beyond. So I'm wishing everybody in Downers Grove and our staff a safe and reflective Memorial Day. That then brings us to item 12, which is reserved for council member new business. And we have 3 items of new business that are on tonight's agenda. Typically what we have done with each item is the council member who first requested the item of new business to be placed on the agenda for consideration for possible furtherance this evening That individual has been called upon to introduce the item for discussion only tonight by the other members of the council. Now, the first two items were initiated by Commissioner Olson. The third one was initiated by Commissioner Wallbach, so we'll take them in that order. With new business item 12A, Commissioner Olson, do you want to introduce that?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I move to direct staff to place a proposal to amend policy regarding the preparation of agendas on a future agenda as presented. So I'll make the motion so we can open debate.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted, this is reflecting the discussion we had last week at the workshop meeting, the retreat meeting, regarding the preparation of agendas, specifically new business items, and ensuring that these are in writing. As Dr. Goodman commented at the beginning of the meeting, this provides the public with knowledge of the items that will be discussed and the opportunity for the public to at least see these items before they're brought up. With that, no further presentation on my end, and I'd ask for my colleagues' support to move this forward.
Commissioner White?
I fully support this request. I think we should move forward with it. And as part of our discussion, we shouldn't get into details this evening. As part of our discussion, we should address the question raised by Dr. Goodman this evening. When will the public be allowed to comment on these items? You know, so that's something that I don't want us to really deliberate tonight, but that's something that we should take care of.
Yes.
Before enacted. Otherwise, I fully support moving forward with this.
Yes. And then we can assign that to our parliamentarian.
Absolutely.
Other thoughts, questions?
I just support what was already said. I agree with both items that we should address, how we address public comment on new business.
All right, so the protocol now would be to actually take a vote on this. All right, if there's any other further discussion. Let's just do it simply. All in favor?
No head
Aye. Any opposed? There we go.
All right, item B.
Item B.
Mr. Mayor, I move to direct staff to place a proposal to amend the zoning ordinance regarding text amendment procedures on a future agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that has been percolating for some time. This is with regard to the text amendment procedures in our zoning ordinance. In prior zoning ordinance, the text amendments could be initiated by the village council, staff, the plan commission, or a resident. In the current zoning ordinance, text amendments can only be initiated by the village council. We've seen some challenges. Dr. Goodman referenced one of those challenges with this new system. And I think that it behooves us to go through this, return to our previous process to allow the full benefit of public hearing in front of the Plan Commission and then council consideration to move forward with specific requests, and would ask for my colleagues' support.
Other questions or comments, Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that I do support this. This is something that was initially brought up a couple of months back, if memory serves, and I think it's a good move. We should get as much input as possible, I think, before the proposed text amendment comes to us, whether it's from the fully vetted staff green sheet through the Plan Commission and whatnot, and good public comment here at Village Hall. Thanks, Mayor.
And Mayor, I just want to add one item in response to what Commissioner Jose said, is that this does not preclude the village council from initiating text amendments. It just allows others to do it as well.
Thanks for that clarification. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I assume process-wise, if I'm understanding this will be on a future agenda, at which point there will be more discussion. So in preparation for that, as staff goes through that effort, I guess I'd appreciate some editorial, if nothing else. I have no problem with this change. It really is fine. It's the way we functioned for at least 4 years of my time up here. But one of the things that prompted the change that we're changing back away from potentially was something we've heard all too often, which is residents come and say, well, that sounded like it was a done deal. One of the things that happens in many, many situations, whether they're economic development incentive program related or text amendment related previously, is that our staff works very hard with the folks that come before us to try and facilitate process. And so if you guys could put your heads together and try and think of ways to help us, avoid that impression. The truth of the matter is that the reason it appears that way sometimes by the time this body sees or receives or hears something is because of the just sheer volume of work that's gone in both from petitioners and staff prior. But that was one piece of the reason for the change that was made before, so that stuff didn't come to us and appear to the public as though it were some sort of backroom done deal. So the change is certainly fine. As David said, it doesn't preclude stuff from starting from us initially, but that's a concern that we were trying to address before, and I'd like to try and put some thought into keeping in front of us.
Thanks, Commissioner. I just want to emphasize what Commissioner Barnett said. For each of these new business items, the vote that's being taken is simply to direct staff to further research the issue and prepare the appropriate form of action for consideration at a later date. So Commissioner Barnett is absolutely right. On each of these items, all the vote means is that staff will then go do the work necessary to bring it back for a first reading in a workshop setting before any formal final action will be taken. This is just a better way, or at least we're trying a better way of identifying how new business items are brought up, how they are moved forward by consensus of the council, and all of this with the public seeing each step of the process to when they will come up again. In some respects, it's a sneak peek of things that will be on future agendas. If there's nothing further on this one, and then we'll figure out that public comment part. And then the last item,
Mayor, you need a vote.
Vote. Okay, I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Yeah. All right, we'll do it by voice vote again. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This is new with...
Sure.
Right, new traditions, that's what I said at the outset of the meeting, new traditions. The final new business item, 12C as in Charlie, was initiated by Commissioner Waldeck. So Commissioner Waldeck, you'd like to lead the charge on that one, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see, I'd like to move to direct staff to place a proposal to amend the comprehensive plan on a future agenda of the Planning Commission for the item as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the second. You have before you proposed language to amend the comprehensive plan as adopted to add the word social so that the third sentence on paragraph 3 reads, "The comprehensive plan seeks to articulate our community's vision for the desired physical, social, and economic characteristics of the village for the next 15 to 20 years, as well as the encouragement of civic engagement." Now, you would think that such a document purports to be comprehensive and is written with so many social aspects that it would include the word social in it. Believe it or not, the word social was not only left off, but it was intentionally removed from our community's comprehensive plan, which was adopted by council. I'd like to recap a brief history as to how the intentional omission was made and how it has adversely affected our community and why this simple but significant change should be made immediately and not linger for future edits. The comprehensive plan was written and prepared carefully by the Ad Hoc Comprehensive Plan Committee, which was chaired by our current Commissioner, Bill White. It consisted of 11 well-prepared, dedicated residents supported by both staff and professional, experienced consultants with input by many others. After authoring and approving the plan, which had the word social already in it, the plan was sent for review and approval to the Plan Commission where it was for about 8 months. Again, the document was reviewed and approved with the word social in it. Then it got to the Village Council, where there was a great deal of policy changes and wordsmithing. At the first meeting in the committee room, one commissioner said that the word social bugged him, and was reported that the word social conjured up negative elements. Well, one definition of the word social is living or disposed to live in companionship with others or in a community, rather than in isolation. Now, how cold and how negative and dark to look at this word as some sort of a threat. Social studies includes history, historic preservation, geography, zoning, law, ordinances. It even includes economics. So if social should be removed, why wasn't economics? Maybe we should add social and remove economics as it's already included. And I'm not suggesting that. So here is a community plan that essentially excludes community. We're left with considering the physical, just the physical. And that's the planning a town around a train layout. Lay some track, just start dropping in a grocery store, a church, a factory, some houses, willy-nilly because they fit. No regard for people? In the same sense, we get to consider people in economic terms. People are only sources of revenue and items of expense. It leaves the characteristics of the plan to ask, is it economically advantageous to the train layout? How can we have something that is written for a community or village and ignore people? Certainly some people are cold, negative, and dark, but it also conjures up a vision of a father, mother, child. Maybe they're out walking their dog in a tree-lined street in a residential neighborhood, not passing concrete walls or noisy businesses, and chatting with neighbors. Maybe it's a couple going for dinner in our downtown and looking at the shops. Maybe one of them works in our Ellsworth Industrial Park. So why is this apparently minor change needed now? And why is it needed and why now? Since the comp plan was adopted, there have been issues that have come before the council that involve social aspects and the comp plan. There was much invocation of the comp plan on one issue in particular over the last few months, also over several meetings on the same issue. A number of our residents publicly criticized the council cared more about economics rather than neighborhood character or historic preservation, both aspects being social in nature. Looking at the comp plan and the actions of the council, one could hardly argue that they were wrong. If we are to be a responsible and responsive council, we need to fix this omission. Let's not bury this waiting for some future revision. Let's not be surprised by another issue that calls into question our purpose or motives. Let's send a strong message to all the residents that a document that purports to be comprehensive is more than physical and economic, but does take into account the social characteristics of living as a community. And with that, I open to the rest of you, and we already have a motion, so thank you, Mayor.
I just want to know, have you said anything for the first reading? That was the warm-up, huh?
I can go on. I usually cut it down.
It's passionate.
I'm not.
As I said to someone else earlier tonight, I think you made your point.
Thank you.
Other discussion. Commissioner Jose, I think I saw your hand first.
Actually, I think Commissioner White may have had his hand first. But
I just saw yours first, but he's yielding the floor to you, sir.
Well, very briefly, addressing why this one change or these small changes, they're not small changes, why the simple paragraph should be changed now. Because the comprehensive plan itself calls for a significant review to be completed within every 5 years. So there's a date in October of 2016, I believe, which will be the 5th anniversary of it being enacted. This change made now would signal this council's philosophy to whatever group or committee engages in the subsequent review of the entire document. And I think that would give guidance to the process that we follow in the future, and that's why I believe it's very important that we do this now. I don't believe the changes that were made to remove this reflect the consensus of everybody that led up to the presentation to council, or it represented the consensus of a majority of the council, but not a majority or a consensus of the entire group that produced the document. That's why I think we do this now, and then we review the entire plan leading up to its 5th-year anniversary.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got no problem with inserting the word social. Obviously, it's a lot of what we do. People are social beings. I'm concerned about the idea that somehow this will be a panacea to some of the problems that Commissioner Waldeck has mentioned. The word residence appears, I've clicked through probably about 30 or so times in the first 30 or 40 pages of the document, just in the last couple of minutes. Historic preservation appears in it, as does respecting neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. Inserting the word social in one sentence is not going to change any of the past votes, nor would it change my opinion on any of those past votes. And I don't think it would change the interpretation necessarily of staff. I'm not going to speak for them, but I think the idea that this is somehow a solution to some of the ideas and developments and other things that have taken place over the last few months is misplaced. What is needed is a review top to bottom of the entire document to make the changes that are necessary to it in specific areas and the changes that are necessary to the zoning code in specific areas, so that we can not just experience the past but learn from it, implement the changes that are needed, and move forward as one community with the types of restrictions on development and respect for neighborhoods that I think we all want to see. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Other comments? Commissioner Brennan?
I concur with Commissioner Jose.
I was going to say that, and I've talked with Commissioner Waldeck about this, so he knows where I stand. I tend to agree with what Commissioner Jose said. I would prefer to, well, number one, I absolutely do think it's time soon to review the comprehensive plan, no question about it. It was failure to do that led to the fact they hadn't been updated in 40 years or so last time. So I certainly do not want to fall into that trap again, where we look at it every lifetime. We should be looking at it at least every 5 years. I think that's absolutely appropriate. And I would welcome and embrace the opportunity to look at all these things in conjunction with that. My preference would be to look at making this change as part of a broader review and update of the comprehensive plan. And to the Commissioner Jose's point and to Commissioner Waldeck's point, maybe even tie in other changes that are designed to effectuate the types of things that you eloquently spoke of, Commissioner, that stem from the change in that sentence. So it's not just opening the door, it's actually giving the path as well. That being said, I have no problem supporting this as a new business item to go forward for further discussion and consideration. We're not taking any final action tonight, and I don't have any problem seeing what comes next.
I have one additional comment, very brief. I don't believe anybody thinks this will be a panacea or a solution all by itself. But a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And this single step signifies the direction we wish to go. So we take the first step in one direction, and if we postpone doing that, then we aren't sending a clear message of the direction that we wish to go. So this is just the first step, but it's a clear direction of where we want to go.
I don't have any problem taking this step. Any other discussion? And then we'll do it with a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All three items proceed to the next level.
Mayor Tully?
After that, you come to the bonus round, right?
Mayor Tully, I move we adjourn.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, and good night, and happy Memorial Day to everyone.
One thing I mentioned,
One of these days, I'm going to vote against that.
And it's not debatable.